Welcome to Transforming and Thriving
with best friends Brooke, Stacie, and Neelia.
Podcast dedicated to women sharing their inspirational stories.
Hey there, everyone. We're so excited to be back. I'm Brooke.
And I'm Stacie. And I have the pleasure of introducing Saul, a friend of my mom's with a beautiful and giving heart who has supported my mom recently through her difficult cancer and chemo journey. Lee has had a long road to recovery with major health battles of her own, which I will let her share more about in a moment in her own words. She's a member of a group in her community in La Quinta, California, where my mom lives too, called the Women of Encouragement, and she loves leading outreach efforts to help others in need. She also recently married the love of her life in the presence of all of their loved ones, and they are blissfully happy. Last year, she opened her own advertising agency, and she's grateful that it has changed the lives of the people working for her in wonderful ways.
Thank you so much for being here, Lee. How are you doing today?
I am doing great, thank you. It is my pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Well, we would love to know a little bit more about your journey. Would you mind sharing about this major health battle that you experienced?
I actually would love to, and it's really interesting because someone just asked me yesterday if it would be hard for me to share my story and relive what I went through. And my answer was immediately no. I am excited to share it and hopefully inspire others to honestly never give up hope. And I thought about it. If I could go back and change everything that happened starting 6 years ago, I wouldn't, because I am so blessed to be where I am now. And just as a little background, 6 years ago, I was happily teaching meditation and New Age practices, and I educated people in the energy centers of the body. I taught on crystals. I did crystal healings, crystal meditations, and I gave readings, all New Age. And I had a big following, and I was very happy to be helping people and truly believed in what I was doing. Then 6 years ago, January of 2019, I was helping my then boyfriend's father in Houston move, and the back of his dad's car trunk malfunctioned and hit me on the back of my head as I was reaching into the trunk. And it hurt. I mean, it hurt for sure. And I had a headache, but I took Tylenol and I just continued what we were doing. And when we returned to California, where I live, just a few days later, I went back to work, but the headache persisted. And my doctor finally, a week later, sent me for an MRI, and that was on January 17th. And when I got out of the MRI, the technician told my husband and I, "You need to get over to hospital as soon as possible. A neurologist is waiting for you." They couldn't tell me anything more. That was it. That's all they told us.
How scary.
Well, you can just imagine what that ride to the hospital was like. I mean, we were terrified. And when we arrived, they immediately admitted me to ICU, put me on a saline drip, and the neurologist came in and informed me that I had a brain bleed, a subdural hematoma, and they needed to keep me monitored in ICU. And truly, I was terrified. And it actually happened the day before my birthday, which is this Saturday. So 6 years ago, almost to the day, and they monitored me. I started to feel better actually on the drip. They only kept me on that for 2 days. And then on January 19th, 2019, it was removed. And pretty quickly, the headache came back and it was even worse. And they put me on a morphine and a tramadol drip. And to be perfectly honest, this little body had never seen anything like medications like that. I literally passed out. And unfortunately, my husband and my sister didn't have any idea that they had changed the drip and that I was on morphine and tramadol. They thought it was still the saline. So I passed out completely for the next 3 days. I was unconscious, and I actually can lose weight pretty quickly. So I was dropping weight like crazy. And within that time, the hospital gave me 4 CT scans. And that caused a host of other problems, which I'll get to in a minute. But my primary doctor visited, and he said to my husband and my sister, "Get her out of here or they're going to kill her." And I know that sounds dramatic, but unfortunately, sometimes we don't always get the best care. And so they did take me home. My husband tells me I was drooling, and he got me home, and I was very weak. I started feeling a very slight buzzing in my head. Now, my brain was swollen, but I could just feel every now and then I'd feel like this little buzzing. Didn't think anything of it. And I did start to get my strength back. If you've had any kind of a brain injury, they tell you no screen time, no bending over. There are a lot of restrictions. So I really couldn't do anything except try to put weight back on, because when I had gone into the hospital, I was about 114 pounds. Again, I can drop weight very fast. When I came out, I was 98 pounds.
Oh
So
my
it's,
gosh.
yeah, it was scary. I mean, you kind of look at yourself like that and you go, oh boy. But I ate a lot. I ate a lot and I put weight back on, which was great. And after 6 months, they did another MRI, and the hematoma had reabsorbed, which is great. June 23rd, and I know these dates because these dates are so significant in one's life when you go through a crisis. June 23rd, 2019, I stopped sleeping because the buzzing in my head started in force. And I think it was because the swelling had gone down completely. And now my brain was starting to feel, for lack of a better term. So on June 23rd, that night, when I went to sleep, literally every 30 seconds, I would feel this in my head, almost like an electrical impulse. It would buzz like, I don't, I hope that
Wow.
comes across, but it was startling. It didn't hurt. You know, people ask me, did it hurt? It didn't hurt, but it was so startling every 30 seconds, and I couldn't sleep at all. And when I told my doctor about it, he looked very confused. He didn't understand, what that could be. He thought it was stress. And it was just very frustrating during that time. And what started to happen when that began, it coincided with my gut going south. And now, having read a lot since then and learned a lot, the brain gut connection is extremely strong. And I think part of it was when they had me in the hospital on all those meds, it really messes up your microbiome. And your friendly bacteria is more important than anything. And when the brain gut connection goes south, it causes all sorts of problems. And those problems started really fast. Now, compounding with the fact that I wasn't sleeping, started having gut issues. And when I say gut issues, I couldn't stop going to the bathroom. I was going 6, 7 times a day, and again, rapidly losing the weight that I had just put back on. And I started bleeding. My colon was bleeding. I was mucusing, and it was scary as can be.
Gosh, I can't
Yeah.
even imagine just how you were talking about the buzzing every 30 seconds and just not having an answer or understanding where that's coming from. And then having all of these other symptoms that just keep popping up that are so scary, that I can imagine that must have felt so overwhelming.
It was overwhelming, and it was frightening. When you see blood in the toilet, it's pretty scary, to be perfectly graphic here. And I went to my doctor, to a gastroenterologist, and they, of course, start putting you on meds. And it was a lot. Every single medicine that they put me on caused more buzzing in my head. Not during the day. I had no buzzing unless I tried to sleep. And the body needs sleep to heal. So it was quite a nightmare. And I was laying crystals all over my body. I was meditating. I was doing all the things that I had taught other people, and none of it helped. And I was rapidly losing weight. I went down to 85 pounds, and I'm 5'5". And I had actually, when I was healing from the brain injury, I'd gone up to 117. So I lost so much of my body weight. I looked like a skeleton. Everything I ate caused more of a reaction. I was buzzing in my brain when I tried to sleep, and they just kept throwing drugs at me. And of course, you become almost desperate, so you'll try anything. But I felt like nobody was listening to me about the buzzing when I was sleeping. And I started to think about those 4 CT scans that they gave me in a matter of 4 days, and how that buzzing that started when I came out of the hospital wasn't there when I went in. I mean, I had the headache, but I didn't have that buzzing. And I began to think that that was the reason that these brain zaps, as I came to affectionately call them, were happening. And I still get them today, but not to any great degree. I get them very occasionally. But it was very hard at that time, going through everything seeming to fall apart in my body. And then when you don't sleep, your blood sugar gets completely thrown off, because sleep helps balance your cortisol and all of those things that affect your blood sugar. So I was put on a blood sugar monitor on my arm to wear, which literally made me a little crazy, honestly, because you're constantly looking at your sugar. I was constantly feeling like my blood sugar was dropping. And have you ever had that feeling sometimes that you're getting hit with one thing after another?
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard people say, it comes in threes, but I feel like sometimes it comes in tens.
Yeah.
And it sounds like for you, you just kept getting hit by one thing after another after another. And it probably was so anxiety provoking having I mean, anyone who has any sort of thing that they have to monitor with their health consistently, like it can almost become this like obsession that's all you can focus on. And you're just in this state of fear all the time, checking it. And then having the buzzing was still going on in your head at that time, you said, right? And it's still
Yep.
going on?
Yep.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
But listen, the buzzing is minimal now. I'm so grateful for that. And it has been minimal for a while. But during that time when I was dealing with everything else, it was intense.
Yeah, that sounds extremely intense. So, how did you get through all of that?
I just feel like at the time, God gave me supernatural strength, because there's no reason why I should be here at 85 pounds, bleeding internally, going to the bathroom so many times a day, and blood sugar issues, and not sleeping. I mean, it's just incredible. It was that about that time that a friend of mine, you asked me before, how did I get through all of this? And I was feeling pretty lost. I was making sure my will was in order, doing all of those things just to make sure that we were prepared.
Yeah.
And a dear friend of mine started talking to me about God. And I've always believed in God, but my new age practices, they teach you're self-sufficient and the universe is there. And they don't really talk about God in that respect. And she started praying with me every day and talking to me about the Bible. I actually had a Bible that my brother, who's a Christian, had given me back in 2013, which I never really read, but I started reading it. And I started learning scripture, and it gave me so much comfort, like a peace. The Bible talks about a peace that surpasses all understanding. I'm just getting that feeling washing over me of calm and peace right now that it gave me then, that it's really unexplainable, but that it was like God reached down with his hand and said, I've got you and you're going to be okay. And that doesn't mean we don't continue to go through trials, but knowing that God was there for me, it just gave me peace. And when I wasn't sleeping at night, which was pretty much never, I was talking to God. And during that time, I was getting the most amazing signs that he was there and that I wasn't alone. And it was, I remember my husband saying to me, I'm really worried about you. And I kept saying, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to get through this. I know that now. I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. And I never wavered from that.
Thank you so much for sharing. It sounds like your faith really became this constant anchor for you. It's clear that your connection has been such an incredible source of strength through this journey. And I think that really, regardless of what people believe or where they draw their strength from, having something to hold onto during tough times can really make all the difference. Whether it's faith, hope, some sort of spiritual belief, another source of meaning. It's so powerful how these things can really guide us through life's challenges. So I'm curious, what was the next chapter? What did it look like for you?
And so as I went through this journey, COVID hit, right? And we all went through that. So that feeling of isolation that I was feeling, now everybody had that feeling of isolation because we were all separated from each other. And during that time, we had the different vaccines we were supposed to get and all of those things. I waited a while, but I did finally get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I was still healing. I was actually doing better. I had gone to a naturopath who was helping me. And she had identified that I had small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which nobody else had identified. Not a single gastroenterologist identified it. I wound up going to Cedars-Sinai, and they had a test that one of their doctors and researchers had developed for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO as it's known. And they gave me that test, and she was right. And they confirmed it. And so he put me on a treatment for that. And I was very hopeful. After I got the vaccine, my body went crazy, out of control. I couldn't stop going to the bathroom. And what happened was, because my immune system was so weakened, and in effect, this weakened it even more, I wound up getting what's called C. diff. Do you know what that is?
No, can you tell us a little bit about that?
So C. diff is actually a deadly bacteria that, if your microbiome, your immune system is not strong, you can actually pick it up from somebody who has it, handling food that you're eating. It's really something that you ingest. And somewhere, somehow, even in my limited diet, something that I ate brought this lovely mortal bacteria into my body called C. diff. And when now I had the issue of going to the bathroom 6-7 times. Now I couldn't be away from a toilet. It was horrible.
How debilitating. I mean,
Horrible.
really. Wow.
And again, I'm already thin, and now I had just started feeling better, and then this happened.
Yeah.
And it was really crazy. My doctor immediately sent me to do a stool sample for a test, and it showed that I had this bacteria.
So what is the treatment for that? Is there one?
So the treatment for C. diff is to put you on one of the strongest antibiotics, the strongest. It's vancomycin that there is. And vancomycin, as my doctor described it, is like throwing a bomb in your gut, because it kills everything. So what happens? Now it may kill that, but you have absolutely no protection in friendly bacteria in your gut. So for 12 days, I was on this vancomycin, and I was doing better. It was making a difference. It was obviously, in my mind, killing this, and it was great. As soon as I got off it, it started again, and they put you on another round of vancomycin. And so I did it for a second round. It started to make me sick. And they changed now. Oh, they tested me again, and it was still there a third time. And they put you on another antibiotic, didn't work. So now, after 3 times with C. diff, there's scripture in the Bible that says, what the enemy means for harm, God turns to your advantage and for his glory. And truly, C. diff changed my life in an absolutely wonderful way, which is hard to believe because the mortality rate on it is really, really high. It's got a 30% mortality rate. And the return rate on C. diff for people, it's got a higher mortality rate, but the return rate on C. diff for people who've gone through the treatment is like 10 to 15%, and I fell into that group. So it was pretty bad. But because I had C. diff now 3 times and nothing worked, and basically you're going to die, the doctor at Cedars-Sinai said, I have good news for you. And I said, what's the good news? And he said, now you're eligible for a fecal transplant. And a fecal transplant is when they go to a stool bank, which houses frozen stool, and they deal with hospitals to give them this stool when they have a situation like mine. And this stool is very carefully screened so that they know they're putting a healthy donor's stool into your body to recolonize your friendly bacteria.
Wow, I had no idea that that's something that existed.
It's amazing. And it actually, they put it up into your intestines through a colonoscopy procedure.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's how there's actually a pill, but no, thank you. So,
I don't blame you.
no, not so much for me. Thank you very much. But actually, so we drove 2 hours early in the morning to Los Angeles to Cedars-Sinai. Actually, more than that, 2.5, 3 hours is 2.5 hours, very early to go to Cedars-Sinai for this colonoscopy procedure for a fecal transplant. And I managed to get there because I was so emptied out from, they have you do the typical procedure for a colonoscopy where you just clean yourself out completely. So I really didn't have anything in me, or at least I thought when we got to the hospital and I was waiting to go in. I'm going to be really graphic here. I lost it in the bathroom and had to clean myself up. It was pretty embarrassing, but that's why I was there to begin with, right? So they took me in, prepped me. And before I went in, they said, I just want you to know this is a procedure where after you're in recovery, you need to try to hold the stool for at least an hour. I know that's going to be hard for you, but at least try, because the longer you hold it, the better the effect is going to be. And I said, okay. When I woke up in recovery, they had me in there. They had me on my side. They reiterated that. And they said, how are you doing? I said, I'm doing fine. An hour later, they asked me how I was doing. I said, I'm doing fine. I didn't have to go. They said, do you want to use the bathroom? I said, no, I'm fine. They said, well, we know you have a long ride home. Are you sure? Do you want to use the bathroom? They kept me there another hour or another half an hour. I didn't have to go. So they wound up giving me protective underwear to put on, and they gave me a pad for the car, and we got home and I still didn't have to go. And this is where God comes in, right? Because again, how could I not have to go to the bathroom after all of that when they told me that nobody has ever held it longer than an hour? And now I'm up to my 4th hour holding this stool, not even trying. It was just there. Came home, got something to eat, and then I finally had to go. And I'm not going to get into the graphics of that, but it's very strange when you go to the bathroom and it's not yours.
Mm.
I hope I'm not being too graphic, but
No, I mean, after all the things that you've been through, first I want to just give you a bubble, put you in a protective bubble. But all the things that you endured for this to go well for you, I'm just so thankful that it went well. I have to ask, how is your health now and life? Like, what are things like now for you?
oh, honey, it is so beautiful. I had tremendous food fear after that, obviously, from what I went through. And slowly I started eating normally. Before that, I could eat, interestingly enough, I was able to eat some salmon, some rice, and maybe some really mushy string beans, but that was my whole diet because nothing else would stay down or not aggravate things even worse. I am now 118 pounds. Woohoo! And I eat what I want. I'm not on any restrictions. I'm sleeping 6 hours a night with an occasional zap early in the morning, but I get my sleep, I get my rest. And as a result of all of this, I became part of, after studying the Bible, I started joining Bible study groups. I was actually baptized in 2023 and came to find out that in my community, there's a wonderful group of Bible study women called the Women of Encouragement. And I started with them studying the Bible last January. By March, the woman who was doing outreach was very busy and didn't have time really to put into it after doing it for 2 years. And I said I would love to help and be a part of it. And I thought I would be helping. I actually became the outreach leader in March of last year. And since then have done 60 outreaches to people in our community going through different challenges. And the most recent one, you're going to love this. Somebody just went through a brain bleed, and I couldn't wait to talk to them and give them hope. I'm just so blessed for what I've been chosen to do, because this is my life purpose.
Well, it sounds like you obviously are a survivor and a fighter. And it sounds like, faith and community and finding meaning through what you went through and really giving back and serving others has truly helped you. And it's incredible to hear how much strength you have and how you've been able to give back to so many, and using this kind of as fuel to give back and make a difference and help others. That's truly beautiful. And I'm so, so, so happy to hear that your health is so much better. And it probably is such a relief to be able to eat and keep your weight on and sleep, those things that you just take for granted until you go through something like that. I would love to hear if there were just a couple things that you could summarize, lessons that you've learned through this whole experience that maybe, you could impart on others, or maybe things that you tell those who you've been supporting in the community who are going through difficult times or health issues, or advice or support you would give. What are some of the key things that you would say to those listening who might need to hear some words of encouragement?
I think that it's really important to stay hopeful, whatever your challenge, because you don't want to give in to that fear. I'm not saying don't be afraid, because I was afraid. And I know that fear turned to faith. And it's faith in the unseen, because you're not always going to see immediately what's planned for you. If I had to go back before all this happened, and I hope I said that at the beginning, I wouldn't go back in spite of all the health challenges, because where I'm at right now in my life is the most beautiful space and place, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, that I have ever been. And so I would say, don't give up hope. Talk to the people you love. Let them know what you're going through. There's kind of a sense to isolate. And it's really important to have that support system. And it was harder for me during COVID, certainly. But I know that we all have people who love and care about us, and we want to be strong for them, but they want to be strong for us too.
Wow, it's so beautifully said. I love those messages. Don't give up hope and talk to people. But it's easy to forget when you're going through something so traumatic or so challenging. So I love how you broke that down, those two takeaways. You're so inspiring. I really appreciate you sharing your story and your message.
Well, thank you. It's truly been my pleasure. And if I leave you with one more thought, I would always say, don't take things at face value, because if I had gone on listening and not looked for answers on my own, I don't think I would have come to the SIBO diagnosis and come to the situation that started to change things as well. So just don't always take things as at face value. I trust your doctor, certainly, but you're allowed to question your doctor. The best doctor is an active listener.
Yeah, it's like trusting your gut, right? Like if you want to pursue things a little more or get a second opinion
That's
or
right. That's right.
yeah, absolutely. Well, wonderful advice, and our time with you is so meaningful. Thank you for being here and your time and energy.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
To all of our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of Transforming and Thriving. We'll be back every other Monday with more inspiring stories. Please follow us on your favorite podcast app and follow us on Instagram so you can be a part of this community and stay up to date with each episode. Feel free to leave a review so that we can get your valuable feedback and other people can find these powerful stories. We're all in this crazy life together, so let's move through it together. See you there.